Nate saw the smoke on Tuesday morning. Thin line rising from the old line shack, 2 miles northeast of the main house. The shack had been empty for 3 years. Roof half caved, door gone, not worth the lumber to salvage. He'd stopped hiring seasonal help after Sarah died. Stopped needing what 2 people could build when only one remained to work it. He saddled the roan gelding without hurrying. Checked the rifle, though he didn't expect trouble. Squatters, more likely. Drifters using the structure for a night or 2 before moving on. He'd asked them to move along. They would. Most people did when you owned the land and the water rights, and carried yourself like you remembered both. The ride took 30 minutes across scrub grass and rocky soil that fought you for every step. The windmill's blades turned lazy circles against a sky gone white with heat. Sagebrush and sun-baked dirt. That was the smell of this place. That and cattle, when the wind turned. The shack came into view. Smoke rose from a fire ring built 10 feet from the collapsed south wall. Controlled. Small. The kind of fire someone built who knew how to build one, and understood the cost of carelessness in dry country. A woman stood beside the fire. Green-skinned, broad-shouldered orc. She didn't move when Nate approached. Didn't sit. Didn't reach for anything. Just stood, watching him with eyes that didn't blink and didn't drop. Her hands hung loose at her sides. Large hands, pale burn scar curving along the right forearm like old rope. Behind her, half hidden in the shack's remaining shadow, a child watched. Small, maybe 5. Half blood from the look of him. Skin lighter than hers, features caught between lineages. The boy didn't make a sound. Nate stopped the horse 20 feet out, close enough to speak without raising his voice, far enough to give her space to decide what she was. She decided to stand there. He looked past her at the fire ring. Rocks pulled from the creek bed, arranged in a circle. No scorched grass beyond the ring's edge. A dented pot sat beside the fire. Canvas pack, patched in 3 places. 2 bedrolls. That was everything he could see. That shack's got a roof leak, Nate said. North corner. Drips when it rains. Her eyes tracked to the shack's roof, then back to him. She nodded once. Nate waited. She didn't speak. The boy stayed hidden. Nate could see one small hand gripping the woman's trouser leg. The child's breathing was silent. That was wrong somehow. Children made noise. This one had learned not to. "You planning to stay?" Nate asked. The woman's shoulders shifted, not quite a shrug. "Haven't decided." Her voice was low, factual. No plea in it, no challenge either. Just statement. "This is my land," Nate said. "I know. Nearest town's 14 miles south. I know that too." He studied her. She studied him back. No fear in her face, no aggression, just assessment, cold and thorough, the way you'd measure a fence post before deciding whether it would hold weight. "You running from something?" he asked. "Not anymore." That could mean 100 things. He didn't ask which one she meant. The wind turned, carrying the smell of her fire. Mesquite, probably. Burned clean. She knew what she was doing. He looked at the shack again. One wall intact, part of another. The roof sagged in the middle where the support beam had cracked 2 winters back. It wasn't shelter. It was the idea of shelter. Barely. "Creek's a half-mile east," Nate said. "Don't foul it upstream of my cattle." She nodded again. He turned the horse, stopped, looked back. "Rain's coming in 3 days, maybe 4. That roof won't hold." "I'll manage," she said. He believed her. The ride back took longer than the ride out. The sun climbed higher. Heat pressed down like a hand. His shirt stuck to his back. The roan's ears flicked at flies. At the main house, Nate unsaddled the horse, brushed him down, checked the water trough. The barn smelled like dust and old leather. He'd built it with Sarah back when building things felt possible. Now he maintained it. That was different. Maintenance didn't ask you to imagine a future. It just asked you to keep what existed from falling apart. Inside the house, he made coffee, set 2 plates on the table from habit, poured coffee into 1 cup, stopped, poured it into the other cup instead, stood there holding the pot. Then he picked up the second plate and moved it back to the shelf. He did this every morning, had for 3 years. He ate standing at the counter, bread, dried beef, an apple going soft. The house was quiet except for the clock above the stove. Sarah had wanted that clock, said a house needed something that marked time passing, made it feel like time mattered. He washed his plate, put it in the rack. That night, after checking the fence line in the west pasture and riding back as the sun dropped below the ridge, he stopped at the supply shed, found the old cast iron pan, the one with the cracked handle that he'd meant to fix and never had, grabbed a 5-pound sack of cornmeal from the stores. He rode northeast in the falling dark. The fire at the line shack had burned down to coals. He could see the woman sitting beside it, the boy curled against her side. She saw him coming. Didn't stand this time. Just watched. Nate stopped at the fence post nearest the shack, the one marking the property boundary he'd never needed to enforce because no one had tested it in 5 years. He dismounted, hooked the pan's handle over the post's top, set the cornmeal bag on the ground beneath it. The woman watched. The boy watched. Nate climbed back into the saddle. He does not tell her to leave, does not tell her to stay. That night, he leaves a cast-iron pan and a bag of cornmeal on the fence post nearest the line shack. She watches from the broken doorway as he rides away without looking back. 6 days passed without a word between them. Nate saw her from a distance. Mornings, smoke from the line shack. Afternoons, she worked near the creek or sat in the shade of the shack's one standing wall. The boy stayed close, never more than 20 yards from her, never making noise Nate could hear even when the wind carried sound. She didn't approach the main house. He didn't approach the shack. They existed across a 1/4 mile of scrub grass and silence, 2 bodies orbiting the same piece of ground without touching. On the 3rd day, he rode the fence line and saw her washing clothes in the creek. She stood knee-deep in the water, scrubbing fabric against a rock. The boy sat on the bank, feet in the current. When Nate passed 100 yards north, she looked up. Didn't wave, didn't stop working. Just looked, then returned to the wash. On the 5th day, the cornmeal was gone from the fence post. The pan remained scoured clean. On the 7th day, he found her at the windmill. The primary windmill, the one that fed the main water troughs and kept 200 head of cattle from dying of thirst when the creek ran thin. Nate had been fighting with the binding mechanism since spring. The part that translated the blade's spin into the pump's reciprocal motion. Iron collar, leather gaskets, a tension assembly that seized every 3rd rotation and made the whole system scream like something dying. 3 hired hands had looked at it. All 3 said the same thing: full replacement, $60 in parts, another $20 in labor. Nate had been nursing it along with grease and stubbornness. Now the woman stood on the windmill's access platform, 15 feet up, with the binding assembly disassembled on the boards beside her. Grease blackened her fingers. A pry bar rested against the central post. Baling wire, cut into precise lengths, lay in a row. She didn't look down when Nate dismounted. He stood at the base of the tower, watching. The sun climbed toward noon. Heat shimmered off the metal blades above her head. She fitted a length of wire through the collar's tension loop, bent it, twisted it back on itself with hands that knew exactly how much pressure iron could take before it broke, threaded the second piece through the gasket housing, creating a makeshift spring assembly that would distribute stress across 3 points instead of 1. It wasn't the repair he would have done. It was better. She worked for another 10 minutes. Nate didn't speak. Didn't ask what she was doing or whether she knew what she was doing. Just watched her hands move. Fast, certain, no wasted motion. Finally, she tested the assembly. Rotated the collar by hand. Once, twice, 3 times. Smooth, no catch, No scream. She wiped her hands on her trousers and climbed down. At the bottom, she met his eyes. It'll hold. How long? Nate asked. Year, maybe 2, you grease it monthly. He looked up at the windmill. The blades turned lazy circles. No sound from the binding. The pump below cycled water into the trough with the rhythm it was supposed to have. Steady, even, like a heartbeat that had forgotten how to skip. Every man I hired said it needed replacement, Nate said. They weren't wrong. She picked up the pry bar, examined it, set it down again. Replacement's the clean answer. This is the answer that works. Nate studied the assembly from below. Wire and tension and an understanding of how metal wanted to move. Where'd you learn that? Forge work. Long time ago. He waited for more. She didn't offer it. The wind shifted, carrying the smell of sagebrush and sun-baked dirt. A hawk circled high above the east pasture, hunting. Pump house has tools, Nate said. You need something. It's there. She looked at him. You asking me to fix more things? I'm saying the tools are there. That's not the same. I know. Her mouth shifted. Not quite a smile. Something drier. You always this careful with words. Seemed to work so far. She nodded once, slow. The boy and I, we're not taking charity. Didn't figure you were. Then what is this? Nate considered. Call it trade. You fix what's broken. I don't ask you to leave. That's not much of a trade. I fix one binding. You fix the binding I couldn't. He looked at the windmill again, then back at her. That's worth something. She was quiet for a long moment. Overhead the blades turned. The pump cycled. Water hit the trough with a sound like distant rain. Your land, she said, finally. Your tools. Your water. You're running this whole place alone. I manage. You do more than manage. Her eyes tracked across the fence line, the pasture, the barn in the distance. 16-mile fence, 200-head water systems. You maintain all of it and don't ask for help and don't complain when things break. She looked back at him. Quiet is a kind of work. Nate didn't answer right away. Didn't know what to say to that. She'd named something he hadn't known needed naming. Yeah, he said finally. I suppose it is. The boy appeared from behind the windmill's base, where he'd been sitting in the shade the whole time. He didn't speak, just stood there, 30 feet away, watching them both. He always that quiet? Nate asked. He talks when there's reason. Hasn't found one yet. Not here. She paused. Not anywhere. Not for 8 months. Nate looked at the boy. The boy looked back. Small face, serious eyes, carrying something too heavy for a child to carry. The tools, Nate said. They're in the pump house. Forge set up in the back corner. It's old. Hasn't been used in 3 years. But it's there. She studied him. You trust me with your tools. I trust you know what to do with them. That's not the same as trusting me. Close enough. She wiped her hands on her trousers, the pale burn scar catching late afternoon light. He nodded once, turns his horse toward the house. That night, he sets 3 plates. The barn door had been dragging since spring. Warped wood, bad hinges. The kind of problem Nate tolerated because fixing it right cost more than living with it wrong. He'd shimmed it twice, planed the bottom edge once. It still scraped dirt every time it opened, still hung crooked in the frame. He noticed it was fixed when he came back from the north pasture. The door swung open smooth and true. No drag, no scrape, just clean motion, the way it was supposed to move when he'd first hung it 5 years ago. Carl stood inside the barn, wiping her hands on a rag. Scrap metal lay scattered on the workbench behind her, offcuts from the smithing shed, pieces he'd been meaning to haul to town for salvage. She'd turned them into a hinge assembly. Leather gaskets, iron pins, a tension spring fabricated from fence wire, and something that looked like it used to be part of a broken bridle bit. Nate dismounted, walked to the door, tested it. Open, closed, open again, perfect swing. No binding. Didn't ask you to do that, he said. She looked at him. Didn't ask if I could. He ran his hand along the new hinge. The metalwork was clean, precise, better than the original hardware. You made this from scrap. Your scrap. Still. She folded the rag, set it on the bench. Door was broken. Now it's not. Nate tested the swing again. The door moved like it had been weighted and balanced by someone who understood how wood and metal worked together, how stress distributed across a frame. You do this kind of work before? Forge second, clan work, structural repair, tool fabrication, anything that needed metal shaped right. Her large hands, pale burn scar visible along the forearm, rested against the workbench edge. Long time ago. Doesn't look like you forgot. Some things stay. The boy appeared in the barn's back corner, where the light didn't reach. Nate hadn't seen him enter. The child stood there, watching, silent as always. He help? Nate asked. He handed me tools when I pointed. Carl glanced toward the boy. He's good at that, watching what's needed before it's asked for. Nate nodded. Looked at the hinge assembly again. Clara Drummond came by while I was out. Carl's expression didn't change. She did. What did she want? Brought a basket. Said her husband wants to talk to you about water rights. Cal picked up a metal offcut, examined it, set it down. Said she wanted to see who was living in your line shack. What did you tell her? Told her I was working my way south. Told her the boy's mine. She believe you? No. Cale's voice was flat, matter of fact. Left the basket anyway. Nate was quiet for a moment. Clara was careful. Not cruel, but careful. The kind of woman who collected information the way other people collected debts. Paul Drummond wanted Nate's water rights. Had wanted them for 2 years. Sending Clara to look wasn't friendship. It was reconnaissance. She say anything else? Nate asked. Asked how long I'd been here. Asked if you were paying me. Asked where I was headed. Carl met his eyes. I said I didn't know. She said that was an interesting answer. It is. I know. Nate walked to the barn's entrance, looked out across the yard toward the main house. The basket sat on the porch rail, right where Clara always left things when she came by, covered with a cloth, probably bread, maybe preserves. Clara baked when she wanted something. You worried? Carl asked. About Clara? About what she'll say? Nate considered. Clara talks. Paul listens. Paul wants my water because his creek runs thin every summer and his cattle suffer for it. He's been trying to buy me out since my wife died. He turned back to face her. You being here doesn't change that. Just gives him something new to talk about. I'm making things harder for you. You fixed my windmill. You fixed my barn door. I'd say you're making things easier. She studied him. That's not what I mean. I know what you mean. The boy moved closer, still 30 feet away, but closer than before. He held a piece of soft wood in one hand, the blunt knife Nate had left by the water basin in the other. Carving something. Nate couldn't tell what. He always carry that? Nate asked. Since you left it. Carl's voice softened slightly. He's good with his hands. Likes to make things. Takes after you. Maybe. Nate watched the boy work the knife against the wood. Careful strokes, patient. The kind of focus that came from needing something to do with your hands when your mouth wouldn't work. That morning, Nate had set 2 plates at the kitchen table. Poured coffee into both cups. Then he'd stood there, staring at the second plate, and moved it back to the shelf. 3 years of that. 3 years of starting the day by remembering she wasn't there. Tonight, he'd set 3. Boy should eat more, Nate said. He's too quiet. Carl's voice was matter-of-fact. He'll talk when there's reason. Nate considered this. The boy carved. The wind moved through the barn's open door. Somewhere in the distance, cattle lowed. He nodded. Fair. Clara's basket sat on the porch rail, untouched. They rode out to the east section fence line just after dawn. Nate in front, Cale behind, the child in the wagon bed with the tools and wire spools. The fence ran for 2 miles along the property's eastern edge, where his land met territory nobody claimed and everybody used. Cattle from 3 ranches grazed there. The fence kept his stock from wandering into disputes he didn't need. It needed work every season. Posts shifted, wire sagged. This year's spring runoff had taken out 40 feet of line where a wash cut through. They worked without speaking. Nate dug post holes with the auger. Kyle set posts, tamped earth, stretched wire between them. The rhythm was easy, familiar, the kind of labor that didn't require words, because the work itself was the conversation. The child sat in the wagon bed 30 yards back, carving soft pine with the blunt knife Nate had left him. Small, careful strokes. Patient. Mid-morning, Nate paused to drink from his canteen. Watched Kyle grip the wire spool, pull it taut with steady pressure. Her hands were large, capable, moving with the certainty of someone who'd done this kind of work before. "You smithed," he said. Not a question, an observation. She didn't look up. "Second in a collective forge. Clan work. We made tools, structural pieces, anything that needed metal shaped right." "You were good at it." "I was." He waited. She pulled the wire tighter, tested the tension, nodded to herself. "What happened?" he asked. She secured the wire to the post with a clip, moved to the next section. The boy's mother died in labor, hemorrhage, fast. She was gone before anyone could do anything. Her voice was flat, factual. Father wouldn't claim the child. Said he was too much trouble, too much reminder of what he'd lost. Half-blood, hard to place. Nobody wanted him. Nate hammered a staple into the post. Didn't speak. "I claimed him," Kyle said. "Forge second doesn't usually take on dependents, but the collective allows it if the claim is formal. I made it formal. Registered it. Did the paperwork." She moved to the next post. "They said I was overreaching. Said I couldn't care for a child and keep my position. I told them I could do both. Did both for 2 years. They were wrong," Nate said. "They were scared." She looked at him then. A woman with a child she didn't birth, working metal, not taking a partner, not fitting into the shape they expected. It made them nervous, made them ask questions. "I didn't answer the way they wanted. So you left." Before they made it an order. Nate set another post, filled the hole, tamped it. The sun climbed higher. The air warmed, sweat darkened the back of his shirt. "He's 5, Kyle said. "He hasn't spoken in 8 months. "He will," Nate said. "You don't know that." "No, but he's listening. I see it. He hears everything. When he's ready, he'll talk." She pulled the next section of wire. Her hands moved with understanding of tension, stress, the point where metal would hold and the point where it would snap. They worked in silence for another hour. Then Nate stopped, set down the hammer, leaned against the post he'd just set. "My wife wanted children," he said. "I didn't. Thought I wasn't built for it. Thought I'd be bad at it, or it'd take something from me I wasn't ready to give. She wanted it enough for both of us, so I went along. Figured love meant saying yes to the things that scared you." Kyle didn't move, didn't interrupt. She got pregnant 2 years into the marriage, carried full term. Labor started on a Tuesday morning. Midwife came. Everything seemed fine. Then it wasn't. He looked at the fence line, the wire stretching into the distance. Bleeding, too much, too fast. Midwife couldn't stop it. My wife died 4 hours after labor started. Baby girl died an hour after that. Never took a full breath. The wind moved through the scrub grass. The child carved wood. The world kept moving. "I inherited a want I'd never felt," Nate said. "A hole shaped exactly like it. Walked around this place for a year thinking I should sell, move on, stop pretending the land needed me when it didn't. Then I realized the land didn't need me. I needed it, needed the work, needed something to keep running that wouldn't die if I stopped paying attention. You stayed, Carl said. I stayed. Why? He thought about that. Because leaving felt like I'd lost twice. Lost her, then lost the place we built. Staying meant something still stood. Something still worked. She nodded once, understanding in the gesture. I haven't said her name aloud in 2 years, Nate said. Feels like if I say it, I'll have to feel it, and I don't know if I can do that and still get up in the morning. Then don't, Carl said. He looked at her. Say it when you're ready, she said. Or don't say it at all. The grief doesn't care whether you name it out loud. It knows where you are. It does. They stood there. 2 people who'd lost different things in similar ways. 2 people who'd kept moving because stopping felt like surrender. Carl picked up the wire spool. We should finish this section before the heat gets worse. We should. The rhythm returned. Digging, setting, stretching, securing. Work that didn't need commentary. Work that held its own meaning. The child climbed down from the wagon bed as the light turned gold. Walked over with the piece of pine he'd been carving. Held it out to Nate, a horse. Rough cut but recognizable. 4 legs, a mane, proportions mostly right. Nate took it, turned it over in his hands. This is good work. The boy didn't speak, looked at him, looked at Kyle, walked back to the wagon. They worked in silence after, repairing fence until the sun dropped behind the ridge. She pulled wire taut, tied it off. Quiet is a kind of work, she said. He hammered the staple home. It is. They came on the first day of autumn. Nate was in the barn sharpening plow blades when he heard the horses. 3 of them moving at a deliberate pace up the access road. He set down the file, stepped into the yard. The riders appeared over the low rise. 2 younger orcs flanked an older one in the center. All 3 wore formal dress, the kind that announced purpose before words did. Kale emerged from the pump house. The child stayed behind her, one hand gripping her shirt. The riders stopped 15 feet from the porch. The elder dismounted first. He wore robes in the record-keeper style, deep red fabric with geometric embroidery along the hems. The 2 flanking riders wore ceremonial blades, the kind meant to establish authority, not threaten violence. Nathaniel Bridger, the elder said. That's right. I am Torum, administrator of the Eastern Collective. I see Kyle, formerly of the Forge second position. I understand she resides on your property. Nate looked at Kale. She stepped forward, green-skinned, broad-shouldered, her expression revealing nothing. I'm here, she said. Toram's gaze settled on her. You left without authorization. You removed a dependent who was not yours to claim. I claimed him legally, filed the paperwork. You approved it. The claim was filed under conditions that no longer apply. Toram reached into the leather case strapped to his saddle, drew out a bound document. The child's father reconsidered his refusal, filed a formal claim 30 days after your departure. Under collective kinship structures, biological claims supersede secondary claims when contested within the allowable window. His claim is valid. His claim is coercion, Carl said. His claim is documented. Toram opened the document, showed her the signatures. 3 witnesses. Notarized by territorial authority. The child is clan property under Regulation 47, subsection 3. You are named as a party who removed him without authorization. Carl's jaw tightened. He refused him, wouldn't look at him. I took responsibility when nobody else would. Your intentions are noted. They do not supersede regulation. Toram's voice remained calm, patient, the tone of someone accustomed to being obeyed. You may contest this through official channels. Until resolution, the child returns to collective custody. No. The word was flat, final. Toram's expression didn't change. You understand the consequence of refusal. Denial of lawful custodial transfer violates territorial accord. You will be compelled. By who? Nate said. Toram turned. This is clan business. This is my land. Nate stepped off the porch. She works it. He lives on it. You're citing territorial accord. Under territorial accord, a laborer in residence has right of petition for dependent protection pending adjudication. I'm filing that petition. Silence settled over the yard. Toram studied him. You've read territorial statute. I have now. One of the younger orcs shifted in his saddle. Toram raised a hand without looking at him. The rider stilled. A laborer petition delays resolution, Toram said. It does not prevent it. The biological claim will be upheld. You are purchasing time, not outcome. Time's enough, Nate said. For what? For her to file proper contest. For the boy to stay where he's been eating regular and sleeping sound. Seems worth delaying for. Toram's mouth thinned. Not anger, calculation. You're risking legal consequence for a woman you've known how long? A month? 6 weeks. And I'm not risking anything. I'm citing the law you brought with you. Toram looked at Kyle. The collective called you too much to carry. I see they were correct. Kyle's voice was level, factual. The clan called the child a problem, and me too much to carry. I left before they made leaving an order. That was 8 months ago. He's gained weight since then. Stopped flinching when doors open. Started carving wood. You want to call that a problem? You're welcome to try. Toram returned the document to his case. Fastened it with deliberate precision. Each movement controlled. The petition will be reviewed. You will be summoned for hearing. When the contest fails, and it will fail, the child will be removed. Refusal at that point carries criminal consequence. Understood, Carl said. Toram mounted his horse. The 2 witnesses followed his lead, movements synchronized, professional. He looked at Nate. You're choosing poorly. I'm choosing, Nate said. Toram turned his horse toward the access road. The 3 riders moved off at the same controlled pace they'd arrived with, unhurried, deliberate. The kind of exit that said this wasn't finished. Carl stood in the yard until the riders disappeared over the rise. She didn't move, didn't speak. The child's hand gripped tight in hers. Her breathing was controlled, even. The child leaned against her leg. Nate walked back to the porch, sat on the top step. The sun dropped lower, the air cooled, shadows stretched across the yard. Cale crossed to the porch, sat on the step beside him. The child stayed close, silent, watching the empty horizon. They'll come back, she said. They will. The biological claim is valid. Territorial law favors blood relation. The petition buys time, nothing more. Time's not nothing. She looked at him. You don't know me well enough to risk this. I know you fix my windmill. Know you show up every morning and work until the work's done. Know the boy's safer here than wherever you came from. He leaned back against the post. That's enough to know. She said nothing. Looked at her hands. Then at the child. Then at the empty road. Thank you, she said. He nodded. That night he set 2 plates at the kitchen table like he'd done every morning for 3 years. Moved one back to the shelf. Stood there looking at the single plate. Then he reached up, took the second plate down again, set it beside the first, added a third. When Kyle and the child came in from the pump house, he gestured to the table. They sat. He poured coffee. The child drank water from a tin cup. Nobody spoke. The quiet in the room was the kind that came from people who'd chosen to be in the same place for reasons that mattered. Toram and his witnesses rode toward town, 3 figures shrinking against the evening horizon. Kyle did not move until they disappeared completely. Then she turned. You didn't have to do that. Nate's voice was level, certain. I know. Clara Drummond arrived 3 days before the hearing. She came alone, mid-afternoon, riding a bay mare with white socks, no basket, no pretense of neighborly visit. She dismounted, tied the horse to the porch rail, sat down on the rail itself without asking. Nate was replacing a section of trough near the barn. He saw her, straightened, walked over. Kyle was in the pump house. The sound of metal on metal carried across the yard. She was fabricating something. Steady rhythm of hammer on steel. "Clara," Nate said. She nodded, looked at the pump house, then back at him. "Paul's signing a petition against you. 37 names so far. Says you're harboring an unregistered worker. Says it's a water rights strategy." Nate leaned against the porch post. "That what you think?" "Doesn't matter what I think. Matters what the territorial clerk thinks when Torum presents it alongside the custodial claim." She paused. "They'll take the boy." "Not if the contest holds." "It won't." Clara's voice was matter-of-fact, not cruel. "Clan law supersedes territorial when kinship's involved. You know that." "Then why are you here?" She looked at him. Her face showed the kind of weathering that came from decades of wind and sun, and work that didn't care about comfort. "Because Paul's wrong, and I wanted you to know someone knows it." She stood, untied her horse, mounted without looking back, rode off at an easy trot, dust rising behind her. Nate watched her go, then he returned to the trough. That evening he cleaned his rifle. Annual maintenance done the same week every year. He sat on the front porch with the disassembled parts laid out on an old cloth, oil lamp burning steady beside him. The smell of gun oil mixed with sagebrush and cooling dirt. Kyle came out from the main house. The child was inside, carving at the kitchen table with the blunt knife and a piece of soft pine. She sat on the top step, 10 feet from Nate, facing the darkening yard. For a while, neither spoke. He ran the cleaning rod through the barrel. She watched the horizon. "Why?" she said. He looked up. "Why what?" "Why stand with me? You've got nothing to gain. Petition just makes you a target. Paul's already organizing against you. More will follow." He set down the cleaning rod, picked up the bolt assembly, inspected it in the lamplight. "You fixed my windmill. Labor, you paid me in food and shelter. You rebuilt my barn door, repaired the pump house gate, fabricated a new hinge assembly for the feed room, retensioned the fence line in the north pasture, cleaned the forge I haven't touched in 2 years and got it working again." He looked at her. "Didn't ask you to do any of that." "Tools were there. Work needed doing." "Work always needs doing. Most people see what needs doing and keep walking. You see it and stay until it's fixed." She was quiet. Then, "That's labor. Not reason enough to risk your land, your water rights, your standing with every neighbor inside 30 miles. It's not just labor." He set down the bolt, wiped his hands on the cloth. "You show up every morning and work until the work's done. You don't ask for anything. You don't leave anything worse than you found it. You don't make noise about what you do or expect thanks for doing it. That's not nothing. It's what anyone does if they're not a burden. It's what you do." And the boy, he's gained weight, stopped flinching when doors slam, started carving, sleeps through the night. I hear him sometimes, in the line shack, breathing steady, no nightmares. He paused. "You did that. You took a child nobody wanted and made him safe enough to sleep." Kyle looked at her hands, curled them into fists, released them. "The clan called him a problem, called me too much to carry. I know. You heard Torum, heard what they said. I did. Then you know what everyone thinks, what everyone's always thought." He picked up the barrel again, sighted down it, checking for obstructions. Set it down, looked at her directly. "Everyone said you were too much. I'm saying sit down and let me show you they were wrong." She stilled. Her breath caught, just slightly, the kind of pause that came when words landed harder than expected. "Sit down where?" she said. He gestured toward the empty space beside him. "Here, at my table, on this land, wherever you want that isn't there." He nodded toward the distant hills. "Everyone who called you too much, they measured you against what they wanted you to be. I'm measuring you against what you are. And what you are is someone who fixes what's broken, feeds a child who wasn't hers, and works a fence line until it's tight. That's not too much, that's exactly enough. Carl's jaw worked. She didn't look at him, looked at the yard, the barn, the darkening sky. The hearing's in 4 days. The biological claim is documented. Territorial clerk won't override clan law. You know that. I know the petition bought time. No, we're using that time to file proper contest. No, Clara's husband is a bastard, but Clara herself rode out here to warn us, which means not everyone's against this. He reassembled the bolt, tested the action. Smooth. Clean. I know the boy carved a horse yesterday. Didn't ask for help. Didn't stop until it looked right. That's a child who thinks he's got time to finish what he starts. I'd like him to keep thinking that. And if the contest fails, then we appeal. And if the appeal fails, we find another route. There's always another route if you're willing to look hard enough. She finally looked at him. Her eyes were steady, unblinking, the way they always were when she was measuring something. You don't owe me this. I know. I didn't ask for it. I know that too. Then why? He set the rifle aside. The lamplight caught the angles of his face, the lines worn there by 3 years of grief and silence and work that never ended. Because you fixed my windmill without asking if it was worth fixing. Because you stayed when you could have kept moving. Because the boy sleeps sound and you made that happen. He paused. And because I set 2 plates every morning for 3 years and moved 1 back every time. And I'm tired of doing that. I'm tired of living like the only thing that matters is keeping things running. You and the boy, you're not just things that need maintaining. You're people who belong here. And I'm saying it out loud so there's no question. Carl's throat moved. She looked away, looked back. I don't know what to say to that. Don't need to say anything. Just need to sit down. She sat. Not beside him, still on the step, still 10 feet away. But she sat, stayed. The child's voice drifted through the open door, soft humming, wordless tune. He picked up the rifle again, finished the reassembly, worked the action 1 final time. Perfect. He set the rifle aside, looked up. The lamplight catches the angles of his face, the lines worn there by 3 years of setting 2 plates. Everyone said you were too much. I'm saying sit down and let me show you they were wrong. 4 days before the hearing, Nate set 2 plates at breakfast, poured coffee into both, then moved 1 back to the shelf without looking at it. Kyle watched from the doorway. Said nothing. The child was already outside, loading tools into the wagon for fence work. They rode out to the east section mid-morning. The sun was high and merciless, the kind of heat that made wire expand in your hands. Kyle worked 20 yards ahead, replacing rotted posts. The child sat in the wagon bed, carving soft pine with his blunt knife. Nate strung wire through the repaired sections, working steady. He stopped. Kyle tamped dirt around a new post, looked back. He was standing with the wire spool in his hands, not moving, just standing. You all right? She called. He didn't answer, set the spool down slowly, sat in the dirt, not checking the wire, not resting, just sat, staring at nothing. Kyle straightened. The child climbed down from the wagon, walked toward them. She followed, stopped a few feet from where Nate sat. She wanted to name her Mary, he said. His voice was flat. Kyle went still. The baby, Sarah had the name picked before we knew it was a girl. She was so certain about it. I wasn't. Thought we had time to decide. He picked up a handful of dirt, let it fall through his fingers. We didn't. Kyle lowered herself to the ground. Not beside him. 5 feet away, giving space. The child reached them, stood at Nate's shoulder. I don't remember what I said to her before she went into labor, Nate continued. Don't remember if I told her I loved her. I remember thinking we had time. 8 months, and I kept thinking we'd talk about it later. Thought there'd be a later. He looked at his hands. She died at sunrise. Baby died an hour after. I held her for maybe 10 minutes. She was so small. Fit right here. He cupped his hands. I tried to remember if Sarah ever told me why she liked the name Mary. Couldn't then, can't now. The child's hand came up, touched Nate's shoulder. Light. Careful. I set 2 plates every morning, Nate said. 3 years. Every single morning. Set them, pour coffee, move one back. Don't even think about it, it's just what I do. He exhaled. I keep this place running because it's the only thing I know how to do. Fence breaks, I fix it. Pump seizes, I fix it. Wife wants a child, I try to give her one. His voice cracked. And it killed her. And I couldn't fix that. Can't. Carl watched him. Her large hands rested on her knees, the pale burn scar visible in the harsh light. She did not speak. I told Torum I'd fight for the boy. Filed petition. Read statute. Learned law I never needed. He looked at Carl. I don't know if I'm doing it for you or for me. Don't know if I'm trying to save him or just trying to stop setting 2 plates. Does it matter? Carl said. What? Does it matter why if the result's the same? Matters if I'm lying to myself. Are you? He was quiet. The child sat down beside him, leaned against his side. Nate's hand came up automatically, rested on the boy's head. I miss her, he said, every morning, and I'm afraid if I stop missing her, if I let go enough to move forward, I'm losing her again. You're not losing her, Kyle said. You're stopping the habit of losing her every day. He looked at her. She looked back, eyes steady. I don't know how to do that, he said. Neither do I, but the hearing's in 4 days. We start there. The sun dropped toward the horizon. The temperature followed, air cooling fast. Light went from white to amber to rose. Carl did not move. The child pressed closer to Nate's side, warm and trusting. Nate's breathing evened gradually, still ragged at the edges but steadier. The wire spools sat forgotten in the dirt beside him. She sat beside him without asking. The child stood close, then sat. The sun dropped. The temperature followed, and still they sat. The light faded. The hills went purple, then grey. Stars appeared one by one. Finally she stood and offered her hand. He looked at it. Her large hands, the pale burn scar catching the last trace of light. He took it. She pulled him to his feet. The child stood too. They walked back to the wagon without speaking, loaded the tools, drove toward the main house as darkness settled over the land. The windmill turned against the sky, blades cutting the evening air in steady rhythm. When they reached the barn, Carl unhitched the horse. Nate carried the tools to the pump house. The child went to the main house, lamplight spilling from the doorway. Nate stood in the yard, looking at the house. Carl came up beside him. Thank you, he said, for staying. Where else would I go? He almost smiled. Didn't quite manage it, but something in his shoulders eased. They walked to the house together. Inside, the child was already at the table, carving. Nate moved to the stove, started coffee. Carl washed her hands at the basin. The work continued. The fence line could wait until morning. The hearing was in 4 days. But tonight, they sat at the same table and ate the same food and shared the same silence. It wasn't fixing anything, but it was enough. The hearing was postponed on a Thursday morning in early October. Torum's 2 witnesses failed to appear. No explanation offered. Nate didn't ask. The territorial magistrate granted a 60-day continuance and suggested that Cale file a formal adoption claim if she intended to pursue permanent custody. She filed it that afternoon. The paperwork was dense, territorial family structure law, written by people who assumed everyone involved could read 3 languages and had access to notaries. Nate helped. Read through statute sections at the kitchen table, while Kyle repaired a broken harness strap and the child carved beside the lamp. Clara Drummond brought the name of a clerk in the territorial office who'd process it quietly if they paid the filing fee in cash. They paid. The waiting started. Kyle worked the ranch like someone who'd been there for years. Fixed the binding on the east windmill. Rebuilt the latch mechanism on the barn's feed door. Spent 2 days fabricating a replacement axle bracket for the wagon when the original cracked during a supply run. She didn't ask permission. Didn't explain her process. Just did the work. Nate watched her hands move, scarred, capable, certain, and didn't tell her to stop. On the 23rd morning, the child spoke his first full sentence. "The knife's too dull. Can I use the whetstone?" Nate handed it to him without a word. Carl's eyes met his across the table. She nodded once. On the 37th day, Paul Drummond rode past the property line, saw Carl working the north fence, turned his horse and left. Didn't stop, didn't speak, just left. Clara came the next day, told them the petition had failed to gather enough signatures. "Paul's angry," she said, "but he's done." She looked at Carl. "You've got friends you don't know about. People remember when someone shows up and works." Carl nodded. Clara left. On the 43rd morning, Nate set 3 plates and didn't move one back. Carl noticed, came to the table slowly. The child was already seated, carving. She stood there, looking at the 3rd plate, coffee steaming beside it. "You staying?" Nate asked. She looked at him. "Depends." "On what?" "On whether this is an offer or an observation." He met her eyes, held them. "It's an offer." She sat down, picked up the coffee, drank, set the cup down carefully. "Then I'm staying." The child looked up from his carving, looked at Nate, looked at Kyle, went back to his work. They ate breakfast, the same food they'd eaten for weeks, but the silence was different, settled, claimed. After, Carl washed the dishes while Nate checked the harness. The child brought his carving to show her, a horse, crude but recognizable, the legs even, the head proportioned right. She held it, turned it in her hands. "It's good work," she said. "Nate showed me how," the child said. She looked out the window toward the barn. Nate was loading the wagon. She set the carving on the shelf beside the stove, next to the cast iron pan he'd left on the fence post months ago. Objects accumulating, evidence of permanence. That night, sitting on the porch after the work was done, she spoke. "Quiet is a kind of work." Nate leaned against the rail, looked at her. "It is. But so is this." She gestured between them, at the table inside where 3 plates sat drying, at the child asleep in the room that used to hold Sarah's sewing supplies, at the ranch around them, maintained and functional. "This," he asked, saying it, claiming it, not just doing the work, but naming what the work means. He considered this, nodded. "Yeah, it is." They sat as the stars came out, the windmill turning steady in the dark. The adoption claim cleared on day 59. The territorial clerk rode out personally, delivered the paperwork, witnessed Carl's signature, and rode back to town. No ceremony, no speeches, just bureaucracy completed. Torum did not return. Winter came. Snow fell twice, melted fast in the high desert sun. They worked through it, repaired the roof on the line shack so it could house seasonal hands again when the cattle needed moving. Reinforced the east fence where the posts had rotted. Rebuilt the pump house door so it sealed properly against wind. The child spoke more, asked questions, told them when he was hungry, when he was cold, when he wanted to learn something new. His voice was quiet but certain. He'd carved 6 horses by February, started working on a cow. By spring, the rhythm was unthinking. Nate set 3 plates every morning. Carl sat down without hesitation. The child brought his carvings to the table and worked while they ate. After breakfast, they divided the labor. Nate to the cattle, Carl to the equipment, the child to whatever task they gave him, feeding chickens, hauling water, stacking firewood. The land didn't care who worked it, But it remembered. Fence held where they repaired it. Windmill turned because she'd fixed the binding. Water flowed because he maintained the system. The ranch kept running because they kept running it. In April, Clara brought bread and stayed for coffee. Watched the child carve at the table. Watched Carl repair a broken gate hinge at the barn. Watched Nate work without the hollow look he'd carried for 3 years. "You're all right," Clara said. Not a question. "We're all right," Nate agreed. She left. Didn't come back for a month. Didn't need to. The crisis had passed. What remained was the work. One evening in late May, Kyle stood at the fence line looking toward the eastern hills. The child was beside her, holding his latest carving. A windmill, intricate, the blades angled right. "You think they'll come back?" the child asked. First time he'd mentioned the clan in months. "No," Carl said. "How do you know?" "Because we're not leaving, and they can't make us." The child nodded, turned the carving in his hands. "This is home now." "It is." They walked back to the house. Nate was at the stove making coffee. He looked up when they entered. The child showed him the windmill carving. Nate held it, examined it, handed it back with a nod. "It's good," he said. The child set it on the shelf beside the others. The collection growing, evidence accumulating. The adoption claim clears on day 59. Torum does not return. By spring, the boy speaks in full sentences. Nate sets 3 plates without thinking. The windmill turns, the fence holds. The land remembers who worked it, so do they.